How many people here know about Not Impossible? A thing or two? Handful of people. Okay, awesome. So what I'll do is I'll spend the next 4 hours walking you guys through everything about us. No, I'm just going to take a couple minutes, tell you a little bit about the history and how we got to what we do now, and talk to you about some of the projects we've done, and one particular project that we think is really important that we're working on. So let's see if this will go. Nope. There we go. All right. Now it's halfway in between, and it did it. So let's see what it does. So everything that we do at Not Impossible is based on this infatuation that we have of looking at things that are impossible and trying to figure out how to make them not impossible. And the way that we do that, what grounds us, is our mission statement. And our mission statement is change the world through a clicker that works. And if we can get a clicker that works, there we go. Hey, Adam, you want to go drive upstairs? Because you know the cadence on this. So our mission is change the world through technology and story. And what this means for us, that's a big, technology and story are two pretty big words. So just to unpack that for a second, this first concept of technology, that can mean a lot of different things. How I got into this was I had an animation and production company, which is a lot of people in Santa Monica in this area come from that space. But I did things like the James Bond main title sequence, which is, I always like to show this because everybody know James Bond films, right? Do you ever know what a main title? Everybody in LA knows what a main title is, right? It's kind of, so in James Bond films it goes action, adventure, explosion. Then it cuts to naked people in animation, right? And then it cuts back to the film. Well, that naked people animation bit, that's a main title. And in the animation world, the world that I was in, that's the Holy Grail. That's the Super Bowl. That's the Stanley Cup. That's what you want to do. There's been only 4 entities in the history of James Bond who have done it. 2 entities that are alive today. But that's not why it was significant. The reason it was significant is that this marked the first time that my mom knew what the hell I did for a living. And so she proceeded to tell everybody that I made James Bond films, which is totally not true. And I never corrected her when she did. So the technology for us was technology for the sake of design, technology for the sake of animation, technology for the sake of characters, technology for the sake of story. And now the world that we play in is still technology, but it's what we call technology for the sake of humanity. And what that means is we will look at the world and we will see things that we consider to be absurd. Things that you look at and you go, that's just not right. That shouldn't be that way. And your qualifications of recognizing an absurdity are very specific. You got to breathe air and pump blood. Because if you can do those 2 things, then you can be revolted, repulsed by seeing something and saying, that's not right, that has to change, and I got to do something. I have to do something. And so that's what we do. We dogpile on these absurdities with groups of engineers and programmers and hackers and makers, and we usually have gobs of duct tape and zip ties along the way, and we figure out how to create that solution, and once we've created the solution, then we figure out how to try to make it accessible for people. Right? So that's what technology for the sake of humanity is. And the second thing is this whole concept of story, right? And story is this underpinning for us because we came from a world of production and design. We use story as that vehicle to scale, right? We don't, my last name wasn't up here, but my last name is not Gates. My last name is not Buffett. My last name is not Bezos. Or Bezos, because you got to say it twice after the divorce, because they both have lots of money, right? So we come into these initiatives and we say, all right, we don't have gobs of money to throw at this thing, so what are we going to do? So we go and we focus on telling the story. We have a mantra called help one, help many. And what we do is we focus on a problem of one person, and then we fixate ourselves on how do we make that absurdity, solve that absurdity for that one person, and then how do we tell the story about that one person. And in doing so, and then blasting that story to the world and telling these compelling stories, then it gives everybody in this room a chance to relate to that story. Because if I said to everybody in this room, who here wants to solve the hunger problem in LA? Okay, it took you a couple seconds. It took you about 3, I asked the question, I went 1 hippopotamus, 2 hippopotamus, 3 hippopotamus, and then some hands went up. But if I said to you, hey, I live over around Gold's Gym, and there's a homeless encampment over there. And I know a young kid over there named Jimmy who did 2 tours over in the Middle East. And I go visit him every now and then just to check in and make sure he's okay. And he's a good kid. He always tells me that he went, he saw some stuff and did some stuff that he can't quite get his head straight. And he came back and he can't quite get it together. And you know how when you're talking to someone and nobody's home? And you know when you're talking to someone and someone's home, but there's just kind of a haze, there's just kind of a little monkey on their back? That's Jimmy, right? He's a good kid, but he just can't quite figure it out. I just asked in this room who here wants to help me solve hunger, and you guys, after about 3 seconds, put your hand up. But if I said to you, after this talk, I'm going to take my hat, I'm going to put it right here, and anybody who wants to put a couple bucks in afterwards, I'm going to go buy Jimmy a sandwich. Who wants to do that? Bam! Okay, did you see how easy that was? Do you see how easy that was? Before I finish the question, y'all put your hands up. Because now hunger has a name. Hunger has a face. Hunger is a human being. It's not a theory. It's not a concept. It's not a statistic. There's a human being on the other side of that. And that's what we do. So we begin every initiative that we tackle by asking ourselves the question, who is the one? Because we know that if we can find that one and we can solve for one and we can tell the story of one, that maybe can give us the impetus and the ability to just take that and scale that out to many. Make sense? All right, so that's how Not Impossible thinks. That's how we live. That's how we approach everything. So chapter 1 happened because of this guy. This guy is a paralyzed graffiti artist that my wife and I met accidentally in downtown LA, and we discovered after learning and meeting with his father and brother, we discovered that this guy who had ALS, who had been lying motionless in bed for 7 years, the only way he could communicate was through a piece of paper with the alphabet on it. And his brother would run his finger along the piece of paper, and then when his finger would get to a letter that he wanted, he would blink, and his brother would write it down. And he would start again, finger, letter, blink, finger, letter, blink. Now, I don't have anybody in my family with ALS who's completely paralyzed, but I've seen stories of Stephen Hawking. I've seen news reports of Stephen Hawking, and I've seen the devices where they move their eyes back and forth, and then it moves the cursor on the screen, and it selects a letter, and then the robot talks like this, right? You guys have seen that too. He couldn't afford that. His parents didn't have the right job. And in the same hospital, 2 doors down, 2 rooms down, other people had it, but he couldn't have it. That's absurd. That's crazy. Why would one person be able to have it and one person not be able to have it, right? So we said, all right, I don't know what, I don't know how, but here we go. We're going to jump on trying to solve this thing. So we ended up, I told my wife we were going to do something. My wife and kids and I, we moved out of our house. We invited all these hackers and makers and programmers and misfit geniuses from all over the world. They moved into our house. We pushed all the tables and chairs against the wall. And we figured out how to map the surface of the eye. And in creating that surface of the eye, we were able to track the pupil and create a device that looked like this. It's called the Eye Writer. And it's a cheap pair of sunglasses from the Venice Beach Boardwalk because I believe in locally grown, sustainable produce. That's locally grown, sustainable produce, right? It's a copper wire, a coat hanger. You duct tape it to the side, you bend it around to the front, and then you put a web camera back, and you knock one open, you zip tie it to the front, and it looks like this, right? And we took it to his hospital room after about 2.5 weeks of just no sleep, just cranking on trying to get this thing done. And eventually, we took it to his hospital room. Sorry, but we may or may not have broken into the used car parking lot downstairs from the hospital, and we set up a gas generator, but there's no proof that we did this. We set up a gas generator, and we set up a massive projector this side connected to the generator with a wireless signal back up to the room. And this artist who had been lying motionless in a bed with this device put on, sat in his room with all his family and friends gathered downstairs watching, and he drew again for the first time in 7 years. And it was an amazing night, right? People were crying, high-fiving, right? And this guy came from a rough part of town, really rough part of town, and his friends were hugging and crying and high-fiving, and we went out and celebrated afterwards, and then we went home, because we had done it. There was no grand plan. We just wanted to help this one dude. And then we woke up. We woke up and it was Time Magazine's top 50 inventions of the year. All of a sudden, all this crazy press started coming in from all over the world. It's now part of the permanent collection at the MoMA in New York. And we were like, wait a second. We just wanted to help this one dude. And all of a sudden, this thing went bigger than anything we could have ever imagined. And so it started to make us think, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe I should stop doing this production thing, and maybe I should focus on just using technology to help people, and maybe there's some meat on the bone here. Obviously, things went crazy. People were contacting us all over the world and telling us about the things that we had published this open source, and so people were using it. And so I thought about it, and I talked to my family and friends about it, and I prayed about it, meditated on it, slept on it. Eventually, I said, I can't go focus on this. I gotta stick with my job. I'm gonna stick with what I got. My company was thriving at the time, but I'm gonna stick to my day job. I'm just going to go back to work. Almost the moment that I made that decision, I got an email from the artist. And it said, the email was, that was the first time I'd drawn anything for 7 years. I feel like I've been held underwater, and someone finally reached down and pulled my head up so I could take a breath. So let me ask you guys, if you're deciding to or not to do something, and some dude sends you an email like that, do you really have a choice anymore? No, and that was the launch of Non-Impossible Labs. And that began this infatuation, thank you. And that began this infatuation of this whole concept, this thought process of what's impossible. And here's the crazy thing about impossible. You can't name anything that's possible today. Not a single thing that's possible today that wasn't impossible first. Think about it. Think about the chairs you're sitting in right now. Think about how you got here today. Think about these incredibly heavy, massive chandeliers hanging on tiny, thin little wires above you guys right there. That's like 2 tons worth of glass hanging above you guys. I wouldn't sit there, but it's like, but we come up with all these things. We're all impossible until when? Until someone made them impossible, right? And so if you think about that, and I don't want to send anybody into any state of PTSD, but do y'all remember the SATs? Remember the inverse? Everyone's like, oh, SATs, right? Remember the inverse logic questions? Inverse logic question is, if everything that is possible today was impossible first, then the inverse of that must also be true, which is everything that is impossible today, if you base it on stats, if you base it on history, if you base it on everything that has transpired up to this minute right now, everything that's impossible must be on the trajectory of going from impossible to what? That's just straight stats, right? I am wearing white shoes, but I'm not trying to convert y'all to a cult, I promise, right? That's just straight stats and data. So we said, all right, and that's the whole the fallacy of impossible. And once we realize that when we look at all the problems that are facing our society today, that all it takes, and you said it, it just takes us to say, I'm going to do something. Not we got to wait for, the stats you were throwing up there are incredible. Things are made possible when human beings decide to go do something. And that motivates the larger institutions to go do something, right? You can't do any of the shit you were talking about if you didn't have passionate people doing it. No way. No way. So if we sit back and wait for entities to tell us and give us permission to do it, ain't nothing's going to get done. But when you guys decide that you want to do it, all of a sudden, it empowers you, and it empowers your cities, it empowers the states, and it empowers the country to say, all right, we're going to go do something. And that's how we make change, when the human beings in this room decide we're going to go do something. And then all of a sudden, that tidal wave happens. And that's how you make the country great. All right? So we're working on a bunch of other stuff right now. Well, I'll show you this next. So this next project, it's called Project Daniel. This was chapter 2 for us. It started off because I went out to dinner with a friend of mine on July 11th. He told me about this incredible doctor named Dr. Tom. Afterwards, I went home and researched him. He's this incredible human being. He was based over in the Nuba Mountains, this remote village in the Nuba Mountains, which is this region between South Sudan and Sudan. He's the only doctor in a 1,500-mile radius. He has to do everything, right? He's a modern-day Mother Teresa. So I read this story about him after dinner, and I'm reading and I'm digging into this thing, and it talks about the one thing he hates to do is to perform amputations. And so I'm like, why is this guy performing amputations? So I dig into that a little bit, and what I learned is the current reigning president of that country at the time was bombing his own people. And he was bombing them with 55-gallon drums filled with jet fuel and shrapnel. And these giant Molotov cocktails would hit the ground, make a big crater, and spray shrapnel everywhere, and that would either kill you or maim you. And so I'm reading this thing, and I read the story, and as I'm going through it, it talks about this one particular boy named Daniel who was tending his family's goats and cows out in the middle of an open field. And because the bombings happen all the time, there's bunkers and foxholes and things for people to hide in because it's just like the sun coming up. The bombs come every day. But he's out in the middle, this young boy is in the middle of an open field. There's no place for him to run, no place for him to hide. He heard the bombs coming. He looks for a place to go, and he saw a tree, and he went and he wrapped his arms around a tree. And the bomb went off not far from where he was, and luckily his body was behind the tree because of that he was protected from the blast. But because his arms were on the other side, it blew off his arms. And so your response was my response. It's 11:30 at night. I went out to dinner with a friend of mine. I read this story, and I'm flipping through, and this is the image that I see. And the thing that got me was not so much the image, because the image is gut-wrenching. But what really got me is that this 12-year-old boy, when he woke up, the first thing he said was, if I could die, I would, because now I'm going to be such a burden to my family. There's not a single human being in this room right now that if you woke up and you were a double amputee, that your first thought would be, I feel so bad for all the people who are going to have to take care of me. Your first thought would be, poor me. It's what mine would be. It's what our kids would be. And so I was like, that's crazy. Well, all right, I got to do something. I don't know what. Told my wife, we're going to do something. She goes, are we moving out of the house again? I said, yep, we're moving out of the house again. Move out. All these crazy people move into our house. And we start to hack, and we start to program, and go through all these different things and machinations. And guess what? Guess what? Everything we tried failed. Every single thing we tried failed. But luckily, we just don't accept no. And we don't accept that we're going to fail. We just keep pushing and keep pushing. And we had some brilliant people come in and say, all right, come here, kid. And they dusted us off, and they taught us how to do different things. And eventually I got on a plane, and I flew into the refugee camp. And that's not the plane, obviously. But we flew into the refugee camp. And on November 11th, which was 4 months to the day that I went out to dinner with that friend of mine, and he told me about Dr. Tom and Daniel, this happened.
There's this thing in me that loves to see things that are supposed to not be done, be done.
Daniel is just one of 50,000 amputees left in the wake of the bloodiest war Africa has ever known. We flew into an active war zone in Sudan with 3D printers, laptops, spools of plastic, and the goal to build Daniel an arm. You ready? The concept of Project Daniel was hatched on July 11th. And on November 11th, Daniel fed himself for the first time in 2 years. But it's never about just one person. If we could teach the locals to do it themselves, then Project Daniel could live on long after we left. And it did. So that's Project Daniel. And so we came back, and in that whole concept of change the world through technology and story, we launched this thing and this thing went bonkers, right? Everybody in the world was talking about this thing. All of a sudden, all these awards and accolades started coming in, but that's not why we did it. By doing this, what it now allows us to do is have this whole conversation of that tirade that I just went on about the fact that real people can go do these things and start a tidal wave of change that happens just by saying Geronimo. There was a slide that we flashed over up in there at the very beginning that I skipped over, but one of our mantras is commit and then figure it out. And I can't tell you what a powerful way that is to operate. When you say something has to be done, I don't know how, I don't know who, I don't know why, but here we go, whoop, and you just jump into it, right? And that is really the movement of impossible, when everyone here realizes that we are the ones that can go out and actually do something significant. And Pastor Ron talked a little bit about that as well. So we're working on a bunch of other things right now. We've got projects that we're doing where we're recreating mobility for the elderly and handicapped with wheelchairs. We're working, we've done some work in terms of creating devices that help to alleviate symptoms of Parkinson's. We're doing all kinds of crazy things, but we also realized that we needed to talk about the things that other people are doing. So we hosted a podcast. We're celebrating other people and the amazing things that they do. We host an award show in downtown LA. It's June 13th. Put it on your calendars. Everybody come on down. It's at the Ace Theater in downtown LA, and it's this celebration of people who just said, I got to do something. And they committed, and then they went out and they came up with whatever solution they needed to. And it's this incredible celebration of people and humanity that are actually doing whatever they can to drive our planet forward. If nothing else, you just leave thinking like, all right, our species has a chance, all right? It's not just about the news feed that we see every day, but we're going to do something. So I would invite you guys to come on down for that. So this last project I'll tell you about is a thing called Hunger and Impossible. It's something that we're incredibly passionate about. So everything that we do starts with an absurdity, right? What's absurd? So you look at the stats around hunger. Close to 50 million Americans struggle to put food on the table every day. 1 in 3 people who are homeless are vets. That's criminal. That you can go serve your country and come back and have even a 1 in 6, 1 in 9 chance of being homeless, that ain't right. That shouldn't be that way, right? 1 in 5 kids live in a food insecure home, and you look at the stats in our state or in our city, you've got 1.4 million adults who are food insecure and 500,000 kids who are food insecure. And here's the crazy thing. You ready? We got plenty of food. It's like showing up to you walk into the kitchen and go, I'm hungry. And your mom or dad says, we got plenty of food. We just can't figure out how to get the cupboard open. If you were a kid, you'd say, Mom, Dad, break the damn thing open, right? Get the sledgehammer out. Do whatever you got to do. It's a supply chain issue. So we chose our one, and we chose homeless youth. There's an organization over by where we work in Venice called Safe Place for Youth, and we interviewed kids over there. And you know what? We asked them, what do you prioritize most? You know what they said? Any guesses? Nope. Cell phones. You laugh. Why? Why would someone who is homeless, is destitute, who is probably hopeless, has a lack of hope, why do they want a cell phone? Community, connection, it's an equalizer. It doesn't know what color your skin is, doesn't know what your pants look like, who you sleep with, who you pray to, doesn't know any of that stuff. It's just an opinion. It's just a connection with another human being. So we said, all right, you can't eat the damn thing. We got to do something with it. So we created this super ridiculously simple CRM tool. CRM is just a way for people to be in touch with what's going on. And what we did is we created this so now we give it to churches, we give it to charities, we give it to schools, Boys and Girls Club, Covenant House, whatever. Those kids, that group, they already have cell phones. 97% of the people in this country have a cell phone. Whether you're poor or rich, you have a cell phone. They're able to input the phone numbers for those people into this, and then it sends them out a simple text message. And the text message, why is it a text message? Simple. Apps, first of all, y'all have 27,000 apps on your phone. You use 5 of them. That's number one. Second is apps cost data. You got to have a data plan. Well, if you're living on the street, you have something that calls or texts. That's what you got. And then you try to go find Wi-Fi that you can get on if you can do something. That's if you have a smartphone. We created a super simple way where all you have to do is enter your address after you're prompted, after the Safe Place for Youth prompted them, are you hungry? They said, yes, or they prompted it. Then they said, enter your address. You enter your address. Now we manually locate you. Now we know exactly where you are. You know when you guys took Uber or Lyft over here and you opened it up and it saw where you were? That's because you're on a data plan. If you're not on a data plan, it doesn't know where you are. That's when you put on the airplane mode, right? That's what it does. Now you tell the address, we know exactly where you are. And now what we do is we populate around you options. You can choose a restaurant and then this food option. Now, why is that different? Why is that unique? Because here's what we do. Go to the next slide here. What we've done is we've taken a tool, charities, and we've given them a simple tool. They just enter the phone numbers for their constituents, and we push them to local restaurants. Why do we push them to local restaurants? Because if I'm homeless, and then do you know how many people who are homeless who will go to school? How many people are homeless who are the working homeless? They have jobs. They can't break out at lunchtime and go all the way across town to try to get fed. They don't want to lose their job. So what we do is we make it so that we populate the same way you see Ubers or Lyfts that populate around you. We populate restaurants that are close to them, and then there's an invisible transaction that takes place behind the scenes. They've chosen a healthy menu option. They don't get to go order the cheesy McCheeseburger heart attack, you know. They get to go in and they order the turkey club or the veggie burrito or something healthy. And when they walk in, now the charity has fed them. Charity knows they're pushing them a meal to someone who they've specifically chosen. They're pushing them to a local restaurant. So now you're actually stimulating the local economy. You're actually pushing money back into the hands of the people of the community. Now, and we're doing it at a discounted price, but we're also sending it to them during off hours. Any restaurant owners in here? Okay, well just imagine you were a restaurant owner. What's your slowest time? Between 2 and 5. How valuable is a customer between 2 and 5? Pretty damn valuable, right? So we can push customers during that time, and they walk in, the person who's homeless or who's food insecure gets to walk in, and they don't walk in as Mick the homeless kid, Mick the homeless vet. They just walk in as Mick. And they walk in, and they show them whatever the redemption code is. They give them a number. They give them a name. They grab their food to go. They say good day, and they walk out, right? And they walk out with dignity. You treat people with dignity, they act dignified. And now they get to eat, and they get to go on about their day. Charity benefits. Everybody benefits. See all this? Where'd that come from? We're just ripping off Lyft and Airbnb and Uber. Right? It's a sharing economy. Now we're just sharing restaurants instead of beds. And I know you don't like Airbnb, so we're not going to go there. Right? Now we're pushing them to local restaurants. Now, I think you like local restaurants, though. Mayor, I agree. I think that's a good one, right? Now we're stimulating the economy while we're solving problems within our community. Now, I'm going to address it over to this over here. If we could feed the people right now who are food insecure, who are living on the street, and we could take away that one concern, that one need that they had, intuitively, is that going to drop petty crime? Is that going to drop some of the BS that goes on? Yeah, because, look, when we were cavemen and women, and we were hungry, we're like, if I go attack that moose, I'm gonna get trounced. Something's gonna happen to me, but I'm hungry and I'm gonna go for it. And you would go for it, right? Because you gotta feed your family. Well, that's a lot of the decisions that these people are having to make right now. I can either starve or I can go do something that I know is not right, but I'm gonna have to go do it because I need to get fed. If we can take that out, we want it. Our vision is that you guys don't have to do it actually lessens the amount of work you're doing to chase people down and apprehend people who don't want to be. They just want to get ahead. And so we see food as a way to reduce crime. We see food as a way to reduce the amount of repeat customers that repeat patients that are going into hospitals. I want to come out next year. I would love to see the statistics that you're blowing up. Like, by implementing Hunger Not Impossible, we have made we've lessened the stress on our police force. We've lessened the stress on EMTs. We've lessened the stress on hospitals having to provide free health care, which drives the health care costs up for everybody else. And we're doing that with just feeding people. That's the basics of Hunger Not Impossible. That's all we're trying to do. So this isn't a theory. We launched this. We've launched this in Venice. We've launched it a couple places, but we launched it in St. Louis. And in 90 days, we fed 12,000 meals with a text message. Now here's some better news. All right, Adam, can you stick your head out the window up there? You guys see this handsome, long-haired guy up there? He's the one who's making sure. You notice I'm not using the clicker? Because he and I know exactly what they're going to say. So Adam drives our Hunger Not Impossible program, and he's going to come up afterwards so you can see him, but we can answer any questions. But we've been going out and talking to different cities and municipalities, because if I ask you, where are you from, what are you going to say? Santa Monica, baby. That's right. And if I ask you guys, most of you is Chicago or Charlotte or New York or whatever, we relate to our cities. So we've been going and talking to mayors. We've been talking to cities. And we just came back from Memphis. And we got a phone call last week from the United Way. And they said, hey, we love this Hunger Not Impossible thing. We want to feed. We'd like to do this, but we want to do 3,000 meals. And we went, okay, that's nice. That's good. I mean, we've already done 12,000 meals, but okay. And then they said, a day. And we went, oh, all right, here we go, right? And so we're going to be launching a pilot. We're launching a bunch of different pilots. We're doing one in downtown LA. We're doing one in Memphis. We're doing one in Fort Worth with a hospital. But we're going to feed 3,000 meals a day for 6 months, which is close to 500,000 meals. And we're going to do it through a text message. So this is an open invitation to anybody and everybody in this room. You can go to our website. You can see Hunger Not Impossible on our website. You can get in touch with us. It's super simple, right? Here's the ingredients. You need people to pay for the food, right? Funders that give money to the charities, to the Boys and Girls Club, to the Covenant House. You need the charities who actually want to implement this program. That's it. You thought I was going to say more, didn't you? That's it. Because we take care of all the work on the back end to be able to connect to the restaurants. Because the restaurants are feeding through Grubhub and Eat24 and all the different things. Like, they're already doing that. We just tie into that. So if you've got a charity that wants it and you got people that can pay for the food. All right, so why do we pull all this stuff off? You ready? Get your phones out. I'm going to drop something really big right now. You ready? Here it comes. It's because we shouldn't. We shouldn't pull this stuff off. I've got no special degree or diploma or credentials. I've got no training in any of this kind of stuff. The reason we pull this off, and I write about this in my book, the reason we pull this off is that we believe in this thing called beautiful limitless naivete. When you see a problem and you say, that's wrong, I got to do something about it, and you didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to be able to pull it off. You don't believe because you're too clueless that you're not qualified or skilled or adapt to be able to pull it off. So we approach it and we say, that has to be solved. And then we find our one, and then we just say Geronimo. We commit and figure it out, and we just go. So I'm going to leave you guys with this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes in the world by Horace Mann. And it's, refuse to die until you have won some victory for humanity. Horace is breaking it down pretty clean for us. If you've done good, you can die. If you haven't, you got to stick around for a little bit longer until you do some good. So my question to you guys is this, right? What's your victory going to be? Right? How are you going to use your skills and your intelligence and your power and what you guys have in this room? How are you going? What's the story that people are going to tell about you? And I think we can all say that if you're sitting in this room right now, nobody is worried when they go home that all their belongings are going to be out on the street. Nobody is worried that they're not going to be able to eat tonight or tomorrow morning. We might have a lot of crazy stuff going on in our lives, but most likely if you're sitting in this room, you probably are going to be okay for the next little bit, right? So if you have that in your life, can we just establish this? If you're sitting in this room, you're blessed. Fair enough? Okay. Fair enough. If you're in this room, you're blessed. All right, so here's my question. How are you going to use your blessings? How are you going to use your blessings? You've been given something. You're going to hoard it? You're going to keep it to yourself? You're going to try to just make as many widgets as you can for yourself? Maybe every now and then give a little bit out? Or are you going to try to use that as a way to help your community, to change your community, and to change? What if your mantra was to be the best ancestor you could be? Think about that. What if it wasn't just about taking everything you could get for you right now and kind of screw the future generations? They can fend for themselves. What if you could try to start to do things that could try to change your own communities and your own world? So the question I want to ask you guys is this. Who's your one? Who is that one person that if when you guys leave tonight and you walk out, you walk home, drive home, who's that one person that you probably have either read about them, you've seen them, whatever? What would happen if you were to choose that person and say, I'm going to help that one person. I'm going to do something for that one person. If nothing else, you pass Horace's test and you can die if you'd like, right? But the chances are you're going to help that one person and you're going to say, that actually wasn't that hard. I'm going to do it again. And Pastor Ron talked about it. Just what if you just reached out to somebody? What if you just said, hey, can I help you? Do you have some family members? Can I buy you a sandwich? Whatever it might be. What if we all chose one? How many people are in this room right now, would you say? What? About 1,000 people. Ready? Here's a math question for you. If 1,000 people go out tomorrow morning and help one person, how many people get helped? Take a minute. Get your computers out. Get your phones out, right? But how would you like to go and see that happen instead of getting on your news feed and seeing some of the shenanigans that are going on in the world, right? How would that make you feel? How would that change the people that are around you, and how would that change everybody? So I want you to go out and think and ask yourself your question, who is your one? Or another way to say it is, who is your Daniel? Who is your Daniel? All right, thank you guys very much. Thank you guys. Thank you.